Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for Unpacking the No, Module 3, the role of agencies. We are completing this training in conjunction with other affiliates from the state of Pennsylvania, including Jewish Family Services of Greater Harrisburg area, Families United Network, and also I am from the Institute for Human Resources and Services. My name is Stephanie Aldridge. I am the foster care and adoption caseworker here, and I am co-hosting today's session with my coworker, Jamie Bonomo.
Hi, all. Thanks for joining us. I'm Jamie Bonomo, foster care and adoption caseworker here at the Institute.
So we are going to walk you through Module 3, which again is the role of agencies. And if you are a new foster parent or resource parent tuning in, we want to give you some helpful tips on what to look for as far as the role of agencies and how important agencies are in helping you through the resource family process. So the first thing that we want to start off by saying is that it's really important to discuss the relationship between families and their agencies, because this can often lead to families remaining steadfast in their commitments as resource parents and having a positive experience navigating the ups and downs of parenting children who come into the resource family. And if you have done your research or have spoken to any agencies, private agencies, or even public children and youth agencies within your region, you've probably gained an understanding that these children that are entering the foster care system have histories of separation from their families of origin, as well as a trauma background. So really, the role of agencies and resource families is a partnership. It's a relationship that you have with your agency that can lead to positive or a negative outcome. So in order to lay a foundation, it's important to talk about the difference between a public agency, a public children and youth agency, and a private agency. So public agencies would be your children and youth agencies, a local county agency. So for example, um, if you live in the Scranton area, that might be Lackawanna County Children and Youth or Wayne County Children and Youth. So it's important to lay a foundation to talk about the difference between public and private agencies. So public agencies have custody of a child, and they deal directly with placing children in out-of-home foster placements. You can apply to become a foster parent through a public agency, or you may choose to go the private route. So private agencies have their own set of policies, and so similarly to CYS or Children and Youth, they have to follow state guidelines for foster care. You can also become a resource family through a private agency, and the child would still remain dependent under a children and youth agency, but you would be a foster parent through that private agency. So when families are making the decision on whether to go with a private agency or a public agency, you have the opportunity to call various agencies within your region to see what worker or what agency mission you really connect with the most. And in the private sector, the agencies that are putting on this training are all from the private sector. Relationships with the agency and caseworkers are really important because they will eventually become the family's liaison and a bridge between the child or the youth that's placed in your home and the county agency that has dependency of that child, meaning that that county agency is the child's legal guardian and they have physical and legal custody of that child. So if you're in the private sector and you go with a private agency, your agency's worker is really going to be your biggest advocate in getting services for either your family or for the youth that's placed in your home. So the relationship begins early in the process. It begins right from that first orientation or right from the first phone call that you have with an agency. The importance of building a trusting relationship with your caseworker to identify a child who your family's strengths can support is really important. So the relationship begins, as I mentioned before, from that first conversation, from that first orientation, and it follows through to future adoptions potentially, or through every foster placement that you accept into your home. So during the orientation process, some things that you can expect, the caseworker should be discussing with your family, the children that come through the foster care system, or through the foster to adopt program at their agency, as well as matching programs and giving concrete examples. So matching programs, I'm referring to children who may have been in the child welfare system for a little more time and they're looking for an adoptive match. Transparency is also very key so that a family isn't misled. During this process, some families may decide that becoming a resource parent just isn't an appropriate decision for them, and that's completely okay. It's being a resource parent is challenging, but it's also extremely rewarding. So if after going through that initial orientation, you decide that it's not a good fit for your family, then that's understandable. Other families become even more motivated to become a positive family connection and a positive light within their community for children who deserve to be in loving and safe families. So, a caseworker's role, aside from guiding a family through the matching process, whether it be through a foster care matching process where you're taking in emergency placements, or whether it's through an adoptive placement, um, some other roles for caseworkers include keeping the family's file up to date, making phone calls to check in regularly with the family, calling the family for placements of youth that may need either temporary or long-term homes, as well as facilitating placements of children. Agencies also provide families with ongoing educational opportunities, which empowers families to make sound parenting decisions. Resource parents will learn about their rights as resource parents as they go through the orientation process, such as listed out under the Reasonable and Prudent Parenting Law, which is a law in Pennsylvania, which enables foster parents to make reasonable decisions for the child in their home based on the child's developmental level. And really what this is meant to promote is normalcy for children who enter the foster care system so that they can attend senior prom, so that they can get their driver's license, so that they can go on field trips. All of those things that previously needed to have court order approval now lies in the hands of the foster parents. So it allows parents to feel more confident in their parenting decisions by going through training, and also a huge piece of that is becoming trauma informed. Once a child is placed in the home, another role of the agency caseworkers would be case management. And that would also be provided by a private agency and in the public sector, children and youth. So a huge role with agencies once a child is placed is to make sure that that child remains safe in that home, that it's a good fit, not only for the family and the child, so that everyone can move forward and have positive relationships. So caseworkers also help families to prepare. This can be a really uncertain and intimidating process if you open your home to children and youth in your community. And even the most prepared families may feel this way. We're asking a lot of you. We're asking you to step into a role that is new, and the child or youth that comes into your home is also new to you. It's an adjustment for everyone involved. Being a resource parent can be a very emotional process. Welcoming children into your home and potentially watching them leave if they are reunified or move with kin. That can be, you can have really strong ties, really strong bonds to a child, and then, the child could potentially leave your home. So this also may affect the children that you already have in your home if you have a family and other children in your home. So it's really important to prepare foster parents and adoptive parents for this. Or if a child's situation leads to an adoptive situation where they are legally free to be adopted, this is a lifelong commitment, and it's a union between a parent and a child, and it's a lifelong commitment. Caseworkers are there to support and come alongside of families and youth during very vulnerable times in their life. And so you want to have an agency that you can really connect with and feel supported by. That's really the biggest message that we want to convey, is that caseworker support is very, very important. You want to know that you have a connection and a support there. It's very important for families to be open and honest with caseworkers and with themselves about what they can handle and what type of youth would fit into their family dynamic. This will allow your caseworker to provide additional support or training in areas that you feel as though you may be lacking. So, for example, you may go into the process of becoming a resource parent and you may say, I can't take a child who has been sexually assaulted in the past, or I can't take a child with an abuse history, or a child who has experienced significant traumas. Well, let's talk about that. What about the placement of a child with that history intimidates you, or maybe makes you uncomfortable? And, sometimes we learn through that process that maybe it's a little triggering for the resource parent because either they themselves have experienced trauma in their past or someone that they love has experienced trauma. So it's important to process through those things with our families. So doing a deep dive into why don't you feel as though you can parent a child with a certain background? We would never force a family into doing something that they are uncomfortable with. However, humans are very complex, as we all know, and a lot of times we don't know everything about a child. So in many ways, this is a leap of faith. A family's strengths, such as compassion, understanding, a listening ear, having no judgment, for example, these can all really help a youth that enters your home to feel safe and accepted. And that's really our goal as caseworkers, to make sure that that youth feels loved, that they feel part of a family, that they feel accepted for who they are. So we want to ensure that we educate families on how they can be that foundation of love for those children. And so through the orientation and even beyond, as you're working with families, caseworkers would have numerous conversations with families to understand their desires as far as matching with a youth who is being placed in foster care, or who may be more readily available for adoption. And also, as that child grows within that family, to make sure that we're checking in and making sure that the family feels supported. So some helpful tools that I have listed on this PowerPoint are the CY 131, which is a checklist that caseworkers will go through that ask specific questions about what a family might feel comfortable as far as behaviors, as far as educational needs, as far as maybe some other special needs. And so a caseworker can go through this checklist with a family to find out what their comfort level is with various characteristics. Another resource for families that is very, very helpful is the core teen curriculum, and specifically the teen characteristics of a successful resource family. These are both things that you can most likely Google, but also your caseworker from your agency can provide you with as well. And we have some additional resources at the end of this PowerPoint as well. So now I am going to pass it over to Jamie. Before I do that, I just want to reiterate, it is important to understand that openness and flexibility are key as you move forward in the process of becoming a resource family. And caseworkers may try to stretch and try to grow your family in the journey, because we do have experience behind the scenes, and we may see strengths in you that maybe you don't even see in yourself. And so with that being said, I'm going to pass it along to Jamie.
Okay, so we are going to move on to caseworkers helping to diffuse and address fears. So when a child is placed in foster care for a period of time, they will usually have a document completed called a child profile, which will document as much as the child's history that we have access to. So we will try to get medical records, educational records, psychological. We'll reach out to family members, birth parents, to try to piece as much information as we can together on that child's history, both for that child to have when they grow up, but also for the foster families to go through to really understand everything that the child has been through. So if you are trying to be matched with a child who has been in care for a longer period of time, your caseworker will usually have access to the child profile. And that is something you will be able to review before being matched with a child, to really try to understand, what this child has been through and what traumas they may have experienced, so that you're better equipped to handle having them placed in your home. Sometimes, though, when a child is being placed in your home just freshly in foster care, we don't have access to those kind of things right off the bat. So it's really going to depend on whether you are being matched or going through foster care. But either way, a caseworker is going to try to get you as much information as possible so that you can make the best informed decision. So a lot of times a family will go through the process saying, yes, I am willing to help a child who's experienced trauma. But after reading through the profile, sometimes things can be really heavy when you learn exactly what it is that the child has gone through in the past. It could be, very triggering and hard to digest. It can bring up a lot of intimidation and fear from families. So that is something you can talk through with your caseworker. Every child's going to be different. Every case is different. So it's really important to kind of take everything on a case-by-case basis and discuss that with your caseworker. Other families might find that, they may have said they don't want a medically needy child to be placed in their home, or anyone who has experienced sexual abuse in the past. But after reading through this profile, they really resonate with this child and they feel a connection to them already before they've even been placed. And they may, on the flip side of it, may consider accepting this child into their home when they thought maybe that was something they couldn't handle initially. So naturally, you'll have a lot of questions about the child, which your caseworker will help you to get answers on. But you need to also keep in mind that the histories are not exhaustive. So we try, as I said, as hard as we can to get as much history, but sometimes the children may have gone through things like abuse in the past and they did not feel comfortable disclosing that, or the child was very young and we weren't able to get, enough background information from family to know certain things that the child had been through. So as much as we try, it's not exhaustive, and there may be things that come to light once they are in your home. So keep in mind that you need to have some patience as well with that, with your caseworkers, because they will certainly get you as much information as they can, but can only give you what is available to them. But we will definitely work through everything to try to get you any necessary services the child might need following that if they were to disclose something to you once in care. But that is definitely something your caseworker will be with you every step of the way through that. Your caseworker will also talk to you about feelings you're experiencing after reading the children's histories, because you may have emotional reactions to that as well. Your caseworker is also there to help you through the whole parenting journey. So you may have raised children of your own prior to this, or maybe you have little ones in your home right now. But every child is different, as we all know, especially children who are in the foster care system and have experienced a lot of trauma. So parenting styles may work for one child and not another. It's not a one size fits all. So it's something that you may have to work through, and it's a work in progress every day with your caseworker to try new things until you find exactly what will work for that particular child. These children may look at the world through a different lens, and therefore you as parents will need support and ongoing education from your caseworkers and your agency about parenting from a trauma-informed standpoint. And like Stephanie said earlier, your agency will help provide you with training about being trauma-informed, as well as any trainings that we see come through that we think would benefit you in your particular situation. So your caseworker is always going to be looking out to keep you educated and informed on things that would help your particular situation. So with providing foster care, there are a lot of unknowns, and oftentimes resource parents are the first trusted adult after being placed in an out-of-home setting. So this too can have challenges that a caseworker can help a family navigate through. So again, like we said earlier, the child may not feel comfortable talking about anything with their caseworker, or maybe they have moved a lot and you are the first stable home that they've had, and some things may come to light that were previously not disclosed. So your caseworker will also assist the family with establishing supportive care, like medical appointments, mental health services, and ensuring all of the children's educational needs are being addressed. So for every particular child, these things are not one size fits all either. Your caseworker will do an individual service plan while the child is in foster care, where we highlight and work on goals that are changed every 6 months, just to try to get the children everything they need, the families all the tools that they need. And then that even follows through to adoption, where we have an individual permanency service plan, where we kind of do the same thing, trying to lay out the foundation of what you are going to do and what your caseworkers are going to do to help you through the adoption process, and kind of trying to look forward and identify some services in the community and through the SWAN helpline that could help you post-adoption, because you are not in this alone. You always have services through your private providers, your county agencies, as well as the SWAN network. So passing it back over to Stephanie for the next section.
Okay. So next, we are going to continue to discuss how your caseworker is your advocate. As I mentioned a little bit earlier, and as Jamie talked about when talking about the children's history and setting up services, your caseworker will share their knowledge with you. They will challenge you to grow. They will be your biggest advocate. Your caseworker will identify areas of growth for the family and provide support needed so that the family is able to support the youth effectively. This can happen before a placement occurs, but a lot of times this happens after a youth is placed. And as we talked about, a child becoming more comfortable in the home, you may learn certain things about a child if they've been moved around a lot. Maybe nobody just ever gave them enough of an opportunity to open up and to talk about some of their needs. And so you might be that first caring adult that comes into contact with that youth and is able to really get a grasp on what they need. If it's through an adoption matching process prior to the youth coming to live with your family, you will most likely read a child profile, as Jamie mentioned. And again, this gives a snapshot of the child's life, why they came into foster care, their current um, lifestyle, their current personality and behaviors, their likes and dislikes. But again, it's impossible to know what a child really needs and what a child is really like until they're actually placed in your home. A lot of times, and I know Jamie has probably seen this as well, we read a case file, which, you know, can be very emotional. It can be very triggering because, you know, these youth have experienced things um, that no one should have to experience, you know, whether it's abuse or neglect or frequent moves. And so it can be really hard to digest. And then the youth steps in front of you and they are amazing and they are resilient and they are fantastic. And so, you know, I would just encourage families to give a youth a chance, because you just never know. A caseworker can help families to navigate normal parenting strategies like age appropriate consequences or offering guidance and support in more challenging situations, like we talked about before with parenting from a trauma informed perspective. Caseworkers, as Jamie mentioned, will create individual service plans to address developmental needs such as special education or early intervention services, mental health, therapies, educational and medical needs, and any extracurricular activities. This helps to outline what everyone's responsibilities are, as Jamie had mentioned, and keeps workers and families accountable. So families that are going through the adoption matching process, Jamie briefly mentioned SWAN services, which can be a absolute wonderful resource for both youth and families and can help to support in various different ways, through supportive services from an adoption family profile, also known as a home study, where we have education and preparation for those families to prepare them for an adoptive situation or even a permanent legal custody situation. We offer child prep services, which help to outline a child's life and process through the different changes that they've experienced. And it can be used as a way to prepare for permanency, whether that's through guardianship or adoption as well. Child profiles, which we talked about, a child's history, child-specific recruitment, which involves finding resources, connections for youth who are in the foster care system and need a permanent connection, whether that's through adoption, guardianship, mentorship. So SWAN really provides amazing services that can be given and referred by county agencies for children in the foster care system. And just mention briefly also that a lot of private providers and county agencies have 24-hour on-call services. So if there's ever an emergency and a resource parent needs to get in touch with someone, they can reach out and get that support. So these are just some resources that are available. And again, you can Google these resources. They should populate right up as soon as you type it into the search bar. The PA State Resource Family Association Resource Parent Manual really gives you an idea of what the requirements are to become a resource parent in Pennsylvania. And it also provides some helpful tips. And then there's adoptpakids.org, which also has tabs for becoming an adoptive parent or becoming a foster parent, as well as there are links there to see children who are waiting for their forever families. So a lot of times I like to point resource parents to look at that if they are interested in adopting through the child welfare system. And it also, adoptpakids.org also provides additional resources and frequently asked questions for new resource families.
So we just want to thank you for tuning in today, and we hope this module has helped you understand the importance of agency support as you are navigating your journey on becoming a Pennsylvania resource parent. We encourage you to join us for module number 4, which is next steps.